Hi, welcome to today's lab on pods. I have my terminal on the right side. So let's get into the first question. Create a namespace called my namespace and a pod with image nginx called nginx on this namespace using imperative command. So let's first go ahead and check if the namespace exists. So kubectl get ns, this is going to list all the namespace, and as we see here we do not see this namespace. Let's create it. Create ns, and then the name is, I'm copying it, my namespace. So rerun the get ns, you're going to see this new namespace created. And then create a pod with the image. So let's run the run command. So this command line is what they're referring as a imperative. So on this newly created namespace, so you can give it with -n. So what it does is run. It's going to asking to create a pod of name nginx with the image nginx under this new namespace, my namespace. So you can view the created pod by kubectl get pod under this namespace, my namespace, and it's running. You can also view the events in it by running the describe command. Here's the events as part of the creation of this pod. We are good with this question. Let's move on to the next one. Create a pod, the same pod, nginx, but this time they're calling it as nginx2 on this namespace and using ml. So this is the other way of creating, which is called declarative way of creating a resource. So let's do the same thing. kubectl run, but this time it's nginx2. And since we have been asked to create it using ml, first let's not create it here. We have to do a dry run, and then if -o is the output of type ml, it's going to give the ml definition declaration for this command, and then let's keep it in a file called nginx2.ml. So let's view that ml file created. So here is the declaration. So as we see here, the kind is the of type pod, and the name that we gave here is nginx2, and the image is nginx. And by default, it uses the same name as the pod name for the container, but you can very well go ahead and change it if needed. So let's go ahead and create this pod using this ml file that we created. So I'm going to use the create command, and the -f is for it's the argument which expects argument of the file. Here the file name nginx2.ml. So as you see here, I didn't create it under the namespace, under this newly created namespace. Instead it got created in the default. Let's go ahead and delete it. It takes a while. Okay, it got deleted. So let's rerun the create, but with the namespace my namespace. So kubectl get pod -n is going to say like under what namespace to look. We see the two pods up and running in this namespace. Let's move on to the next question. Create a busybox pod using the imperative command that runs the command en. So we have been asked to create a pod that should also run a command called env as part of the creation. So kubectl will use the run command, run busybox. So they didn't say the image name, so it's implicit that it's the image busybox. And it should also run a command, so we'll give -n command, and then what is the command -n, and then what is the command here is env. Yep. And here they didn't give under which namespace to be created. That means by default it is in the default namespace, so you don't have to specify the namespace here. So we have created the pod. So kubectl get pod, we have our busybox pod created. Also we have been asked to see the output of this. Basically like since you are running the command env, so when you look at the logs you're going to see the output of this env command. So let's go ahead and view the logs of this pod. So this is the expected output since the pod ran the env command as part of the creation. Now it's the same thing, but this time we have been asked to create it via ML file. So I'm going to just show how the ML file is going to look. So it's a busybox2. So let's do a dry run. I'm not going to create it. Dry run equal to client, and output is ML. So you can either copy to the file. Here all we are interested is to just view how the ML file looks when command is given. As you see here, it didn't do the expected thing. So this is one thing that you will commonly see in the exam. The reason is, so we gave the dry run equal to client, all those things as part of the command. So what kubectl does is like as anything after the -n command, it treats as the argument to the command. So instead how we should have run it is, so this dry run and -o ml should have gone before the -n command. So let's go ahead and delete it. So these are some of the common errors that we tend to do during the exam. So if you try to avoid those things, that's going to really help. So let me redo the same thing, but this time I'm going to run this -n dry before the command, and ml output of type ml. So now you're going to see the difference. So it's not, it didn't create the pod, also it did the expected, what we expected to do. It spit out the ml file here. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Okay, so this is just to get the ml for the new namespace called myns without creating it. So anytime when we have been asked to do it, so we should use the dry run. So kubectl create ns myns, and since we do not want to create this, dry run equal to client, and we want to see the ML file. So if the question is also says like copy it to a file, do it. Otherwise, in our case, we are going to just view it. So if we have been asked to do a copy to file, make sure you send this output to a file. Let's say myns.ml, something like that. So here it got copied. So let's view that. So this is the definition file for creation of a new namespace. So here it's of kind namespace and of name myns. Next question is get pods on all namespace. So kubectl get pods -a is going to give the list out the pods in all namespace. So as you see here, it is listing out all the pods, including the one that has been created by the Kubernetes. Next, change the pod nginx with the nginx 1.7.1. So we created this nginx pod in my namespace. So we can view the same here. I'm listing out under all namespace. As you see here, nginx2 is under my namespace. So now we have been asked to change the image. So use the kubectl set command, set image. Set image is going to set the new image, whatever you want. So now we have to give the resource. In our case, it is a pod of name nginx. Now we should give the container name, so which is nginx, and the new image, that is nginx 1.7.1, and this is in the my namespace. So we can verify the same by running the kubectl describe pod nginx -n namespace. I give the namespace spelling wrong. So as we see here under the events, now this was the initial one. Now it tried to pull the new image nginx 1.7.1 and it was able to pull it, and it has recreated the container. Let's move on to the next question. Get nginx pods IP. So use the kubectl get pod, but this time with -o wide. That's going to give a few additional information like IP, and this pod runs on my namespace. So as you see here, so we have an IP address of 10.244.1.3, and we have been asked to access this IP from another temporary box, busy box. So in order to make it as a temporary, you need to give -rm and -it interactive terminal to get into the shell. And here you can give wget directly with the IP, or you can get into the shell and then, so we already have the busy box. In the default thing. So maybe let's name it as a busybox temp. Here, use the wget to hit this IP, copying it. And Nginx default runs on 80 port. As you see here, so this I was able to successfully connect to this Nginx IP, Nginx container basically, and it returns index.html. I'm getting out of the terminal. As we see here, as I get out the terminal, so since this is a temporary pod, the pod gets deleted immediately. So I'm running the get pod in the default. As you see here, this busybox temp is nowhere listed here. Okay, moving on to the next question. Get the Nginx pods ML file, which is simple. So Nginx pod, and this runs on my namespace, and you use the -o ml to get the ML file. So here they didn't ask us to store it anywhere, so just display it here. Okay. The next one, get information about the pod. So all they're saying is like how to use the descript command, which we did earlier. Similarly, how to view logs, which you are already aware of. kubectl get logs. In this case, it's in Nginx. If pod crashes and restarts, get logs about the previous instance. So it's the same as the logs. So in with regards to Nginx, it did restart it, as you notice, like when we did an image update. So let's try to run it and see. So this is a log that you wouldn't see it if I run it without it. So as you see here, like, which is different, like all it's talking here is like how it got restarted. And execute a simple shell. So we already did with that busybox temp. We can go ahead and do it. kubectl execute nginx -it, that is interactive terminal, and since it runs on a different namespace, hyphen, so what shell to be run. So I'm getting into this. So as you see here, now we are inside this container, nginx container. Let me do the ls. So this was the index file that we saw earlier that was returned when we tried to connect to this container. We can exit. Yep. Create an nginx pod in default namespace and need to set a environmental value of var1 equal to val1. So you can do it in with the imperative command. So here they didn't give the image, it's assumed it's nginx. Here for environmental value, you can directly give it here as -f and env, with the key value pair var1 equal to val1. So pod has been created. So you can view this value by getting into the shell and running a env command, and it's going to display all the env. So before which, let's confirm if this pod got created. Okay, pod is running. Execute -it. So here -env. So what it's going to do is we are asking it to run the env command that's going to display all the environmental variables values that is available for this container. So it has all the nginx properties, and here is the one that we had set var1 equal to val1. And sometimes there may be the list may be big. In those cases you can do the same thing, but you can grep it to the value that you are looking for. Here we are looking for var1, so all we are interested in is var1 equal to val1. Finally, do a cleanup. So here we created few pods inside the my namespace. So either you can go ahead and delete all those pod one by one, or you can delete that namespace itself. This is going to delete all the resource that we created inside this namespace, and then finally it deletes the namespace as well. Okay, it got deleted. So kubectl get ns, we no longer see the my namespace. It got deleted successfully. So let's check. I'm gonna clear it. In default namespace, we have created these many pods, and then we have this is the default service that is running. So you can do delete pod -all. What it's going to do is delete all the pods. You don't have to name it one by one. As you see here, all the pods are selected automatically and deleted. So again, just make sure like you do not run it in production. Like, so this is just for your to understand like how it is, what it is doing. So with that, we have cleaned all the resource. Thanks for watching. See you in the next lab.